Hey, and welcome to Module 13, where I'm going to tell you all about the art of revising a narrative. Can you believe we're almost done? Just this and the last module, and you guys are free. I hope you've had fun, but we still have a little bit more to go, so let's get to it. Okay, so I'm going to tell you all about, again, the art of revising a narrative. And I use the word art as key because revising is all about making your rough draft more engaging to the reader. That goes for all of the prose we have looked at and written, including memoir, creative, nonfiction, and fiction. And this lecture is all about how to do that. Let's get started. As we covered way back in Module 6, revision is really more than just editing. Revision, as a reminder, means to see again with new eyes, whereas editing is more about the mechanical aspects like punctuation, spelling, grammar, and the like. For this week's assignment, you are going to be revising some previous piece of prose, whether that's your memoir, the scene you wrote, or the short story. The first thing I want you to do as you begin the revision process is to focus on the content. In a fictional story, it's best to start with the main plot and avoid any subplots that may have crept in. Subplots are typically more for novels or longer works of fiction and don't work as well in a short story. I'm not saying you can't have them, but when you're trying to tell a short story that's coherent, sometimes subplots get you all messed up. I like to use fairy tales as an example because fairy tales, as a rule, follow a succinct pattern. We've already talked a lot about Cinderella, right? Think about how that story follows a linear chain of events, and there aren't a lot of asides, like why the father is always absent, or going into detail about the stepsisters and their opinions about everything. It just stays focused on Cinderella, the main character. So my advice when you are new to story writing is to keep things simple, keep the plot focused on one character, and not to deviate too much. You can get fancy as you get more experienced. Start now, simple, and it'll be great. If you decide to revise your memoir piece, keep it focused on a particular event and try not to go off in a lot of different directions. So, there are so many ways to tell a story. So many. And we don't have time to go into all of them. I'm going to talk about the basics with you so that you can have a firm foundation. That way, as you keep writing, you can build on what we have started here. That being said, there is no right nor wrong way to tell a story. You just have to determine the best way for the story you want to tell. Easier than it sounds. That starts with your point of view. Who is going to be telling this story? From what vantage point are they telling it? As it happens? Or is it a retrospective looking back? The biggest thing to think about is how to keep your reader engaged by considering these few things. Are you starting in the right place? This is always tricky, and I still struggle with it, even to this day. The ideal is to start as close to the action as you can. For you, that might mean cutting out some of the beginning. You might really like it, but does it push the story forward? That's what you really have to ask yourself. Use of language, and I'm talking about your writing, not the dialogue of your characters. The next one is the balance of showing versus telling. Is there enough summary? Is there enough scene? Too much summary can make a reader lose interest fast, but too little and there might not be enough information you as the writer are giving out to allow your reader to understand what's going on. Use of dialogue. There are different types, and we'll look at that more in just a little bit. And finally, character development. Those are the basics we are going to look at in a little bit more detail. So, when you start a story, how do you know where to start? And again, there are a lot of viewpoints on this particular question. But one thing that I like to make sure when I do begin writing a story are getting across these three details as quickly as possible. 1, who is the story about? 2, where are they? And 3, what is at stake? Most modern short stories, even if they are genre pieces, use this type of introduction because we like to feel grounded. As readers, we like to know what we're dealing with right up front. So the next thing we need to talk about is that you start closer to the end of your story, whether that means you start with the action or start at the end of the story and circle back to relate how it all came about. Next, one thing I really encourage you to do is to cut out any mundane or overly detailed sequences at the start of your story. I did see some of these as I was reading your memoir pieces. For instance, the alarm clock goes off and the protagonist gets out of bed and brushes their teeth and has breakfast and, just don't do that, because when you consider it, these are things that we all do and no one is particularly interested in them, right? Which brings me to my final question about where do we begin? And that is, where does the action start? Is it hitting the snooze button 5 times? Or is it when the car in front of you on the freeway bursts into flames? That might be a bit of an exaggeration, but you do see my point. What is it about the start of the story that makes it out of the ordinary? When we talk about how we use language, what I'm really talking about is your writing style, the word choices you make. In the previous presentation back in Module 6, when we talked about revision, I mentioned there were things that I wanted you to avoid. These things are like cliches. Instead, say yes to fresh language. Reading good poetry is a wonderful way to expose yourself to fresh, clean language. Avoid passive voice. Opt for active verbs. He was mad, so he went over there is much less interesting than he charged over, fists clenched in fury. Too much showing or telling. If you show too much, you might overwhelm your reader. If you tell too much, you might bore them to tears. Try to find a good balance between them. It's usually a good call. Lofty language. Don't try to be the next Jane Austen or Charles Dickens. They lived in a different time. Write from your own time. Use language that makes sense to you. And awkward rhythm. Don't try to force things because you want to use a specific word. If you're trying too hard, it probably isn't working anyway. So I know I've talked a little bit about this through the semester, but I really want to impress upon you now. Avoid cliches at all costs. Sadly, they're everywhere and it is so, so hard to clean them out completely, but do try your hardest. Some examples of cliches would be like the ones that you see here, or tears ran like rivers down her cheeks, or think outside the box, or the grass is always greener. They are old and tired, and they will make your writing old and tired. Instead, opt for concrete details, fresh language, and interesting similes and metaphors. Dialogue is fascinating because it's one of those skills that you can acquire, but I will say that learning to write good dialogue is challenging for many people. One thing I have noticed with some frequency, especially among student writers, is that sometimes they will try to cram too much information into their dialogue as a way to show over tell. A lot of more seasoned writers call this laundry listing, which is a cliche in itself, or info dumping. It never works like you hope. It just leaves your dialogue seem overdone, long-winded, and boring. I suggest balance. Yes, let some information come across in dialogue, but don't be afraid to let your narrator give a little summary combined with the dialogue. While I enjoy folks who geographically come from different places, avoid using dialects or regional speech too much. A little goes a long way. A lot can jar the reader right out of the narrative. A good practice is to listen how people talk. I often eavesdrop at coffee shops and other public places, specifically for this purpose. You don't have to be obvious about it, just listen to the rhythm of speech, how people speak in fragments of sentences sometimes, and how the pitch of the voice, facial expressions, gestures, all add to meaning of speech. In order to keep a good balance, use a combination of direct speech, in other words, speech in quotation marks, indirect speech, something not in quotes, and summary. Take a look at the next slide for an example. So I have two things I want to show you on this page. The top is the example I was talking about on the last screen. So direct, indirect, and summary. Direct is in the pink. Those are the parts of dialogue that are in the quotes. I don't like the way he talks to you, Alex said, and you see, he concluded, not good. Indirect is basically a paraphrasing of something somebody said. He added that it made him uncomfortable. So he's saying it made him uncomfortable without having it be in the quotation marks. And then summary is just a little bit more of an extended indirect. So then he went on to tell her the story of how his father used to talk to his mother the same way and how it often made his mother cry. Basically paraphrasing, just a longer example. Now, the second thing I want to talk to you about is formatting dialogue. When you are formatting dialogue, it is very, 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 very important that you start a new line each time a different person speaks. If you don't, it will be nearly impossible to read and you will make me cry. And you don't want to make me cry. I don't like crying. So formatting dialogue properly, look at the examples here. It's all one conversation. Hey, can you pass me the ketchup? I asked. Line break. Do you want the regular or sugar-free? He replied. Line break. Regular, I said. Sugar-free is gross. I pretended to gag. Make a return. Hit the return button every single time somebody new is speaking and indent that sucker. You don't have to think of a fancy way to describe how someone said something either. Using said as a tag or replied or asked is perfectly fine. In fact, it is probably preferred because using too many descriptive verbs for how someone speaks, he grumbled, he screeched, she whispered, etc., it can be overkill and it can be so exhausting. Trust me. So, let's talk a little bit about character development. When we talk about character development, there are so many ways we can accomplish this. Again, too many to go over in one lecture. So, let's stick to the basics. Dialogue is probably one of the foremost ways to indicate character. The way they speak, the things they say, the way they say them, all reflect character. Next to that, what the character does, the actions they take are the next biggest tell of character. What do they do? Or better yet, what do they fail to do? Thought. What does the character think? Is it the same or different from the things that they say? These are all ways of the character expressing themselves. Then we get to the last three on this list. Image, what does the character look like? What facial expressions and gestures do they use? Other characters in the story may have opinions to a person's character, and the narrator might have something to say as well. These last three are all indirect. They are not coming from the character itself. They're coming from other characters and other things that are happening in the story. Let's talk about formatting, because this is the easiest way to get points. I will repeat, this is the easiest way to get points. And some of you still haven't quite gotten that. So, for MLA formatting, which is always what we use, 12-point Times New Roman font, 1-inch margins on all four sides. Use pagination, last name and page number in the upper right corner. And the header always goes on the upper left side, first page only. Your name, your teacher's name, the course number, and the date. And then, do not forget to double space everything. Justify on the left side. Center title only, but always, always, always have a title. And please, for the love of God, use paragraphs. You're killing me. Indent for each new paragraph. Each new idea that comes up is a new paragraph. Each time somebody else speaks is a new paragraph. And you have to change the line then too. So, formatting counts. And it's so easy. If you just take a moment to get it right, you will get good points. And that is about all I have for you. So I did find this quote. I don't know who Kelly Barnhill is, but I like what she says here. Makes a lot of sense. That's the magic of revisions. Every cut is necessary and every cut hurts, but something new always grows. Don't be afraid to kill your darlings. You might make something even better. So good luck. Go forth and revise, and we'll see how it goes.